Hello again. Essay here. What is cultural relativism? Well, if you're an academic, you would say it's a part of anthropology. And I'm thinking, Indeed, the original concept was first formulated by Franz Boas. I think I'm pronouncing his name right. Yeah, he was an anthropologist back in the 19th century. Actually, he was originally a German anthropologist, but he immigrated to the United States. But that doesn't matter. But anyway, he supposedly was quoted as saying that civilization is not something absolute, but is relative, and our ideas and concepts are true only so far as our civilization goes. And yet the actual term cultural revolution wasn't actually coined by Boas. It was actually coined by one of his students, Robert Lowe, who was actually from Austria, but that doesn't matter much either. But the actual first time the term itself appeared anywhere was in the Oxford Dictionary back in the 1920s. And it was attributed to a social theorist named Alan Locke, who was actually a black man, but he was also a rogue scholar as well as a philosopher and writer. But that's besides the point. But anyway, the term itself became common amongst anthropologists primarily in the post-World War II era. Why? Well, according to literature, Boas, believed that the sweep of cultures to be found in connection with any subspecies is so vast and pervasive that there cannot be a relationship between cultures and race. And cultural relativism involves specific methodological claims. And of course, at this point, you're probably eyes are glazed over saying this sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. And I guess unless you're a trained anthropologist, I guess you would consider it just gobbledygook. But anyway, but colloquially speaking, cultural relativism became popular in post-World War II era because of a direct reaction to Nazism as well as post-colonial politics. And some of you are saying, oh, so it became political. Yep. But anyway, this video is not so much about the history of cultural relativism. It's about one particular incident that may have been influenced by such esoteric anthropological concepts. Now I'm going to show you a simple video by our old friend Paul Joseph Watson, who gets into the nitty-gritty about this one particular incident that happened in Egypt fairly recently. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
Beautiful woman.
A disturbing video has gone viral, showing a solo female traveller being sexually harassed by a taxi driver in Egypt.
What? Good, beautiful woman.
Fuck you!
No, don't understand. No touch.
No touch, please.
No touch, please.
No touch? Alright, he seems reasonable.
What?
Beautiful.
What the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, stop drooling and look where you're going, you creepy fucker.
Why?
Oh,
What happened?
no happy. No good.
Why you see my leg?
Say good woman.
What part of his Kuma-addled brain thinks any of this is going to impress her?
Okay, go drive.
Beautiful woman.
Please drive.
Drive, yes.
Yeah, please drive.
Yes, drive.
Don't think driving is his top priority in this moment, unless it's driving her to his house.
بقول لك ايه رايك نروح البيت عندي. My house.
我
What?
告诉你，你觉得去我家怎么样？
No, never.
Apparently she then asks if she can bring her boyfriend to his house.
Again.
我可以带我男朋友去你家吗？
But he didn't seem too keen on that.
No, انا هو صديق ليه يور انت حلوة كده.
He really seems to think he can touch her so long as he says no touch.
What?
Good, beautiful woman.
Fuck you!
No, don't understand. No touch.
No touch, please.
لا no touch please. طب اوكي هير بدوية.
What?
بدوية هير. بدوية.
Okay.
And not to victim blame, because this is all on him. But many respondents wondered why she travelled to Egypt alone dressed like that. There are countries where a girl should never go, especially alone. Stop trying to go to exotic countries to go find yourself. The people just go to Muslim countries thinking they're just like any other. Why are Western and Asian women flocking to third world countries dressed immodestly? Do you think they'll just treat you like a princess? Probably because they've swallowed the cultural relativism narrative that the entire world is just a tolerant, liberal, multicultural utopia, when quite clearly it isn't. Fun fact, when I visited Egypt, our taxi driver tried to purchase me from my dad for some chickens and camels. I have an idea. Stop believing that these places are friendly and safe while simultaneously attacking those of us who tell you they aren't. Although given Uber's shocking record with sexual assaults in Western countries, you might not have to travel abroad to get the same treatment. According to reports after the clip was posted on an Egyptian Instagram page, the driver was subsequently arrested by authorities.
Beautiful woman.
It was then revealed that he was under the influence of drugs at the time of the incident. Drugs. Yeah, I'm sure that totally explains his behaviour.
Fuck you!
No.
The safety. Many of these individuals are now visiting their cultural enrichment on Europe. We've seen innumerable viral videos out of countries like Germany showing women complaining about how they're increasingly afraid of using public transport or going out alone.
Einfach nur, weil ich Angst habe, Bahn zu fahren, Angst habe, in die Stadt zu gehen, Angst habe, irgendwas noch in der Öffentlichkeit zu machen.
Einen Kuss bitte.
Don't touch me.
No, sorry.
Nein, wir haben so viel Angst nachts in den Öffis. Wir haben so viel Angst, draußen rumzustehen.
Sweden seems to be encountering similar issues.
Let's break that down. Algerians were 122 times more likely to commit rape than a native Swede, and Afghans 69 times more likely.
Blinded by the pervasive myth of cultural relativism, the travel media relentlessly pushes the idea that it's safe for women to travel alone in sketchy countries. And it definitely appears to be having an effect. Travel companies are reporting a huge increase in solo female travel. According to Intrepid, 46% of its customer base is solo travellers and 72% of them are female. More and more females and couples are opting to travel without their partners, often due to unshared interests in destinations or travel types. Sorry. What self-respecting man would be perfectly happy with his wife or girlfriend going travelling alone without him? And vice versa, if I buggered off on holiday on my own to find myself or some silly shit like that, my wife had divorced me, and rightly so. So why do they weirdly keep hyping solo female travel as if it's some new form of women's lib? From the same women's interest website, we learned that the #1 destination out of all places for solo female travel is, wait for it, Morocco. We know Morocco might not seem like the most obvious choice as a solo female travel destination, but there is a way to feel safe and have a transformative trip to the country, a women-only adventure. Telling women to travel alone to Morocco to find themselves. What could possibly go wrong? The promotion of solo female travel is another manifestation of the myth of cultural relativism. The mantra that diversity is our greatest strength not only within your gentrified little multicultural bubble back at home, but the entire world over, when quite clearly liberal attitudes towards female behaviour in many parts of the world haven't changed a single bit.
Fuck you!
The world's always been a dangerous place, especially for women. Even more so for women travelling alone. But now, thanks to cultural enrichment, to experience that danger, increasingly, women don't have to travel very far.
Okay, you saw that, right? Now, of course, if you're a female, a single female, a single female who is, dare I use the phrase, halfway attractive, this video probably made your skin crawl. Because, and believe me, I don't have to say it, I think most young females probably already know this. The last time a woman who is out alone by herself on a dark street would not want to be there, especially since you don't know who's lurking in the shadows. And of course, anyone who's ever used Lyft or Uber probably knows that there has been incidents just like you saw in this video happening right here in the good old US of A, as well as other zip codes as well that were not necessarily in the third world. But anyway, as you saw in this video, the fact that this particular woman was in Egypt, a Muslim country, by herself, and then she probably didn't appreciate that when it comes to Muslim cultures, it's like, I'm trying to remember the actual Arabic term, haram. If she was a native Egyptian, let's just say this, she probably would not have gotten out of that cab alive. I'm not joking. Because believe me, I have read story after story after story coming out of not just Egypt, but out of pretty much every North African country, from Tunisia all the way to Algeria and Morocco too, where women, local women have been harassed, have been fondled, and worse, on public transportation. No joke. And yet, the authorities don't seem to care for the most part. Why? Because of their patriarchal structure of their societies. And this is something I always thought was so funny about Muslim cultures per se. Because I remember reading years ago, back in the 20th century, how, like, for example, in Saudi Arabia, women were not allowed to go out in public unless they were accompanied by a male member of their family, or at least their husbands. And of course, some of you saying, yeah, that sounds like Neanderthalic, to say the least. But then when you actually dig deep into the culture of those societies, then you see that what that cultural norm is not so much being patriarchal per se, but protective. And now some of you women, especially you third, fourth, fifth wave feminists, you sitting there right now are practically, upchucking inside your damn Starbucks. But hear me out. Because when you consider that the average age in most of these Muslim countries is quite young. Indeed, I remember reading not too long ago, referring to Afghanistan, that the average age of men in Afghanistan, I think, was like 22 or 24. And you say, so what? Well, according to cultural norms, if you want to get married, you have to go through multiple processes, like courtships, meeting the family, arranging the dowry in such cases, and etc., and then finally an actual nuptials. And you say, so what? Now, of course, anyone who knows Western societies knows that sort of thing was going on from, my God, that's almost as far back as you want, like ancient Greco-Roman times. And indeed into the medieval era. In fact, I think that sort of methodology for arranging marriages only kind of petered out in the 19th and about the end of the 19th century. And yet that kind of thing carried on into Muslim cultures. But this is the part I'm getting at. The funny thing about Muslim cultures is that modern Muslim cultures, all those tenets to get married are still in force today. And you say, so what? Well, the funny thing about Muslim cultures is that economically they tend to be underdeveloped. I ain't just for talking about Afghanistan. I mean, you take a map of the Middle East and throw a dart at it, wherever it lands, you'll land on some underdeveloped Muslim country. No joke. In fact, I can't even tell you a Muslim country that is developed. Now, some of you saying, what about Dubai? Okay, I'll concede that one. That was developed. But for the most part, most of the Muslim countries are underdeveloped. And then because of that, a lot of men, young men, can't get married. And of course you say, so what? Excuse me? You have a lot of young men running around these Muslim countries. They can't go to like the singles bars to date women because such things are just not allowed. They're haram. And of course, at this point, you're saying, oh, so you got a bunch of young men with the blue balls. And I'm thinking, And of course, if you have a bunch of young men who are frustrated because they can't get married because they don't have jobs or decent jobs to get a dowry together to get a good woman, you can probably guess what's going to happen next. Yeah. And at that point, you say, oh, And then here comes along Miss Mary Jane from some Western country who somehow thinks it's safe enough to go to some place like Cairo all by herself as it is to like go to, say, down the block to the local 7-Eleven over there in West LA or someplace like that. And I'm thinking, no. Nope, and no. And of course, at this point, you say whether to do a cultural relativism. I'm getting to that part. And of course, as you saw in Watson's video, he basically said the same thing, that these young women from mostly Western countries don't seem to appreciate the fact that they are not in Kansas anymore, colloquially speaking. And thus, they go to these third world countries, mostly Muslim countries, or at least some places like India where you have a lot of Muslims, and they don't appreciate the environment they're in. Because Watson had a similar video from, I think, last year, where this boyfriend and girlfriend from Spain were driving across, making a tour around the world on motorcycles, and they managed to get as far as India. And according to the story, a bunch of men, presumably single men, basically attacked them in the night as they were sleeping by the side of the road. And at this point you say, why don't you just go to the local Holiday Inn? I'm wondering that too. But according to the these two Spaniards, they said that they thought they were in a safe place. And I'm thinking, you're in a third world country. What made you think you're safe? And indeed, they said that the location where they were attacked, they only moved to because they had been at a different location where a bunch of sketchy looking men were hanging nearby, and they just didn't feel safe. And I'm thinking at least their little spidey sense was tingling. And they moved to a secondary location, but unfortunately, in the middle of the night, another group of sketchy looking men showed up, and this time they attacked them. and they said they beat the guy, robbed both of them, and they raped the woman. And therefore, you have to ask the question, and this is not the first time this has happened. Multiple stories have been coming out of all these third world countries, whether it be in Latin America, Africa, Middle East, India, even certain places in Southeast Asia. And yet these people, mostly young, single women from Western countries, keep going to these places by themselves. And then you have to ask, why? Now, of course, some of you are saying, well, if they're like really young women, like right out of high school, they're just wet behind the ears and they're ignorant. And I'm thinking, I concur. But then you would think, after about the upteenth time this has happened, some of these women will say, you know what, I'm not going to Bangladesh by myself. I'm not going to Cambodia by myself. I'm not going to Pakistan by myself. You would figure they would get the message. And before you even ask the question, this is not a recent phenomenon either. Because how many people are familiar with Margot Kidder? You know, she played Lois Lane in the Superman films with Christopher Reeve. Now, most people I don't know this about old Margot is that way back in the 1960s, she was a hippie. And you say, what, like a hippie from the 60s? Yeah, she was that. Yeah, she was hanging out there in California, even though she's originally from Canada, but whatever. Indeed, I remember in this interview, she was talking about how back in the 1960s, she was at a Hollywood party, and she said there was all kinds of naked women and all kinds of drugs, you know, cocaine, heroin, whatever. And she said that she ran into Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, and George Lucas. And she met them only because she noticed that they were over in a corner at this Hollywood party arguing amongst themselves, and she was wondering what they'd be arguing about, and she introduced herself, and then she found out what they were arguing about. Apparently, these three guys were so fixated on the lady from Shanghai, and you say, huh? Yeah, it's an old Orson Welles film. But anyway, these guys were arguing about the deeper meaning of the film's climax. Of course, some of you probably say, I never heard of the film. Yeah, we have to look it up. And she was so shocked. She's saying, why are these three guys so arguing about an old movie from the 1940s? And I'm thinking, that's the kind of guys they were. But anyway, the point of the story is this. In that same interview, Margot Kidder spoke about the first time she ever went to Marrakesh, which is in Morocco. And you say, well, what's she doing there? Yeah, well, she didn't get that level of detail, but she did say when she was walking the streets in Marrakesh by herself, she said that some strange man grabbed her from behind and dragged her into an alleyway and put a knife to her throat. And then he said, and I remember this part because she was kind of matter of fact. She said the guy asked her, "Do you want to be raped, you American whore?" And you know what her response was? She didn't scream or cry anything. She basically retorted, "I'm actually Canadian." Now, of course, you probably say, oh, Margot must have some balls on her made of stainless steel. And I'm thinking, yeah. But of course, the fact that she came out of that with her life intact shows that the woman is pretty savvy. And she's got a spine of stainless steel, too. Because I can't imagine too many of these modern women, how they would react in such a situation. And no, I don't think they would pick up their damn phone and try to take a picture of someone with a knife at their throat. I mean, seriously? Are you kidding? No, I don't think so. But at least in this particular woman that was in Egypt, at least she wasn't raped or worse. And hopefully she learned her lesson. Don't be going to these third world countries by yourself if you're a young, pretty lady. Because these people in these societies don't have the same moral compass as people in Western societies do. Yes, we do have our own creeps, and yes, we do have our own rapists, but at least we have, stronger cultural and legal systems to keep the creeps and the freaks at bay, for the most part. Because as I told you, women in some of these Muslim countries who do get attacked, let's just say this, the local authorities ain't too let's just say they lack empathy. Nope, they don't. And as you saw in Watsonsville, this particular woman, she's lucky that at least the Egyptian authorities did something about her almost near sexual assault. But then you have to think, what if the woman in Watson's video wasn't some foreigner? What if she was a local Egyptian woman? Do you think the local Egyptian authorities would reacted the same way? I don't think so either. Well, that's all I gotta say about this particular incident with this woman. And hopefully she and others like her will finally learn from the mistakes of others. Do not go to these strange places alone, because if something does happen to you, you may not have the opportunity to call 911. Just saying. Well, that's it for me, and that's my opinion.